They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
What's up, everyone? My name is Ethan. This is Courtside TV. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it for today. So, today's topic is about a team that has probably been the most disappointing team in the NBA so far this year, and that's the New Orleans Pelicans. I know we say that a lot about a lot of teams that have, this has been the most disappointing, this has been the most disappointing. It's kind of hard to quantify that, but the Pelicans are one of them, I guess is what I should say. One of the most disappointing teams in the league. They're 5-10, just coming off a loss to the lowly Minnesota Timberwolves, who have been even worse than the Pelicans this year, and were tonight playing without Karl-Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell. So, very short-handed Timberwolves team, still ended up beating the Pelicans, who I believe are basically at full strength. I don't believe they're missing anybody due to injury. Zion's playing, Brandon Ingram's playing. They pretty much have everybody. So, it's going to be interesting to see how the Pelicans respond to this, because that's a pretty tough loss. And the Pelicans really have not been talked about very much, especially for a team that has Zion Williamson on it, which is interesting because, as I'm sure we're all aware, Zion was probably the most hyped up player entering the league in a very long time, like maybe since LeBron, where he got tons of coverage. The media went crazy for him during his 1 year at Duke, and then leading up to his NBA debut. He unfortunately had to miss the first couple of months of his rookie year with the injury, didn't play very much last year. But, the whole build up to Zion's NBA debut was very, very exciting for a lot of people. It was a huge deal, and people were expecting them to, make the playoffs after having a strong bubble run, but that didn't end up happening. They struggled in the bubble and failed out of the playoffs there. And it's, again, this season, they have not looked very good so far, and they made a couple of changes over the offseason, right? Most notably shipping out Drew Holiday, and getting Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe in there. It's a different team now than it was a year ago, but still people were expecting them to be good. Brandon Ingram is still there. Zion's supposed to take another leap, but I think it's pretty fair to maybe pin some of these struggles on Zion, and what he hasn't been doing so far, and that is defense. Because when you watch him, like, I was listening to the Mismatch the other day. I don't know if you guys know, but the Mismatch is one of my favorite podcasts from The Ringer with Kevin O'Connor and Chris Vernon, and I listen to them every episode, right? And they talked about how Zion's defense has not been good, and it's simply been a lack of effort, because we were, out him in college and in high school and stuff, and even last season, he was always giving effort on defensive plays. He's never been the greatest defensive player, but he would always at least, try. Whereas this year, it seems like he's just not at all. And maybe that's by design, right? Like, on that podcast, they brought up how maybe they're trying to conserve him offensively and trying to manage his injury and load management and all sorts of stuff by telling him to not go 100% on defense for the entire game, which, it's a little bit understandable. Star players do that sometimes, right? But it's been really frustrating to watch sometimes, his just not closing out and not going up for rebounds as tough as he should, and all sorts of stuff, and it's just interesting to watch Zion this year, because he just doesn't move the way that you would expect someone who is 20 years old to move. It's just a little concerning to me, and we had talked about this over the offseason and when assessing Zion's future and stuff. The question has been his injury history, right? Because he's a guy who had that injury last year that forced him to miss the first couple of months of the year. He was dinged up in college a little bit, and you're just kind of worried, especially with an explosive athlete like this, and a guy who's as heavy as he is. He has a lot of muscle on him. He's a really, really big guy, and so the fact that he's able to jump so high is great from a basketball perspective, but landing on those knees over and over and over again, it might not be the most sustainable thing. And he has been on a minutes restriction. Last year he was only at about 28 minutes per game. This season he's brought that up to about 33, which is better. Still not the most ideal. You would want your star player to be playing a little bit more than that, but it's better, right? And hopefully that continues to trend upward as he maybe plays himself into shape and gets a little bit healthier. but it is kind of interesting watching Zion because he's just such a unique player. We've never really seen something like this before, and it feels like he is struggling, even though his numbers don't necessarily tell you that, because he's averaging more points, more rebounds. His shooting numbers are a little bit better. Let's see here. His 2-point percentages are up. His 3-point percentage is down, but he's not taking very many threes. He's taking less threes than he did last year, which was also not very many. Yeah, like his shooting percentages are up across the board. So, and he's averaging more points and all of that. So the stats don't necessarily tell you that Zion has not had a great season so far, but with maybe relative to expectations and also factoring in the defensive side of things, I think it's fair to say he's been pretty disappointing. So where does that leave him? It feels kind of like the NBA hype machine has almost sort of left Zion behind. We've moved on to like Luka Doncic, who has, obviously performed very well through the first little bit of his career, him in the playoffs last season, and as well this season they've moved on to rookies like LaMelo Ball, who has been impressive in his own right through the first little bit, and he was very hyped up entering the league as well, and also some other impressive rookies around the league have also been getting a lot of coverage. And so these young guys, even maybe Brandon Ingram has been getting a little bit more hype than Zion this year, his own teammate. So is it fair to say that maybe Zion will not live up to the hype of being a number 1 overall pick? I know it's still very, very early. Not even just a number 1 overall pick, but just like the otherworldly expectations placed on him, where, he was clearly dubbed as like the best prospect at least since Anthony Davis and maybe since LeBron. Like he was that level of hype, and you just don't hear that much anymore. And maybe that's good for him, right? To kind of get out of the spotlight a little bit, and allow him to kind of work on his game without so much pressure on him. But the injury stuff is a little concerning for me. If they're already having to load manage him and say, hey, don't go full out on defense because we want to conserve your knees, it might be a little bit tough for him to have a long career in the NBA. And while he's here, it'll be good. It'll be fun to watch him. He'll definitely be a very good player for as long as he can play for. But I am really, really worried about the injury stuff. And I don't know. Maybe it's a little too early for that, right? I don't know. It's just a little bit concerning to me. That's all. That's really all. And so where does that leave the Pelicans? Well, if Zion isn't the superstar that we expected him to be this year, not saying he can't get to that level at some point, but this season it doesn't look like he's taken a huge step forward, right? He's averaging about 1 more point per game, so it's very similar to last year. So if he hasn't taken a huge leap this year, and Brandon Ingram seems like he's also a similar player to last year, and they don't really have pieces that fit super well around these guys, then unfortunately the Pelicans might be looking at another year in the lottery. And that could be a good thing long-term for the development of the team, right? We know that this is a very strong draft class, and they have a lot of picks in order to potentially move up in the draft or trade for somebody or whoever, right? Because they have all those picks still from the Anthony Davis trade and now from the Drew Holiday thing. They have ammo here to build a good roster around Zion and Ingram. So, maybe it's a good thing for them to maybe get, like the 5th, 6th, 7th overall pick, whatever it is, in this draft class that's a good draft class. We know how solid this draft class is. Everybody's been hyping it up for the past, couple years at this point, and there's a lot of good players available. So maybe they can get another player to pair with Zion and Brandon Ingram, put all those 3 of those guys together, and that's looking like a really nice young core. So, maybe that's, like I said, it might be a good thing for the franchise long term, but I think it might be fair to sort of call into question the fact that people have dubbed the future of the Pelicans maybe the brightest in the league. I think we can maybe take a little bit of a step back on that, just because as good as Zion might be, it might not be like best player in the league for 15 years good. I think maybe we should reassess that. That might be a little harsh, but I think to this point, it might be fair to say that his career has been actually slightly underwhelming. And that's, he's averaging 24 points a game, but, just relative to the expectation for him. I don't know. So I think that's about all I have on Zion and the Pelicans. And I don't want to be too harsh on the guy because he seems like a really, really nice guy, a nice kid. And he's awesome to watch on the basketball court, right? Like he's electrifying when he's on. It's awesome. And I think it's like he can still definitely reach the potential that he has. Injuries hurting somebody's career is never a good thing, and so obviously I'm hoping all the best for Zion and hoping that he can eventually reach his ceiling and reach his potential. And like I said, he's averaging like 24 points a game, so it's not like he's having a bad season, but maybe just relative to expectations, he hasn't been great. And I almost kind of feel a little bad already I kind of almost want to take a couple of the things back, but I think it's fair to maybe call into question a couple of the things that we've seen from Zion this year. Just the whole defensive thing and the injuries, it just does concern me a little bit. But yeah, like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ring the bell if you want to, leave a comment letting me know what you think about Zion. Was I a little too harsh? I don't know, maybe I was, but let me know down below. And yeah, with all that said, I will see you guys in the next one.